guys, so I have this concept that I've been kind of playing with. I don't want to say it's a new Damascus idea, but it's something I haven't seen a whole lot of people do. And that's the idea to use the blade itself as a canvas for something pictorial. Rather than a repeating pattern like you do with mosaics, you do a single image. The first one I did like that was the sunset pattern that I did over the summer, or the spring rather, that I had at Blade Show. And it was pretty close to what I had in my mind. It realized the idea pretty well, but the pattern wasn't as bold or as brilliant as I wanted it. I have to do a knife for the Ashokan seminar for the raffle for the whiskey night. So I figured this was a good opportunity to try to do a second version of this. It's a little bit different. And one of the things I'd had as an idea for the first one that I never got a chance to realize was to make trees. That gave me some ideas on how to do that. This is my first attempt at it. So what I've done is I've stacked up 15 and 20 and 1080 into a cube, essentially. Oh no, dropped it. But I've taken my bars and I've slit them in half. The first one I slit at 1/4 inch, the second one at 3/4, inch and a quarter, 1 inch, and then finally 1.5 inches. And I took those bars and I inverted them so that I had a bar of 1080, which is the red. You see this? Let's try that again. It's not welded yet, so it's kind of really easy to drop stuff. All right, let's see. Maybe you can see it now. Let's see. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm going to take this bar and I'm going to weld this up. You can see the 15 and 20 on the side here, and all the red is 15 and 20. Everything else is 1080. So I'm going to forge weld this up together, and then I'm going to forge it onto the rhombus. So I'll forge it on the diagonal, and what that should do is it should give me a pattern that is skewed to one side. I'll then trim off the long leg on the bottom of the pattern, which should be all black if I did my calculation right, and then I'll flip that to the top. So what I should end up with is a pattern that looks something like this. I'll draw in the stuff. So the dotted lines would be the original forging, the 15 and 20 being the black lines, and then I would take this piece here and put it onto the top, and then I'll take two of them, I'll cut that in half and put it together again, and I should end up with something like this. Like that. And then I'll forge those into different size tiles that all kind of relate to each other, and I'll weld that into the final unit. The basic idea is I'm going to have a little piece of my earlier rendition of Jamie's campfire pattern that I found a tile of. I'm going to make a little campfire in the middle, and I'm going to have a screen of trees, and then I'm going to have a moon set up above it. So as I work through this pattern, I'll kind of keep going and show you guys as I work. But I wanted to show you the setup. I'm going to go TIG weld this together, and then I'm going to trim the ends even, weld a handle on it, and get it welded up. Little detail I wanted to show you guys. So when I did these, I glued them together. So I glued a piece of 1080 to a piece of 15 and 20, marked off and sawed it, so that when I put them back together, I don't know if this will show on camera, the saw lines are perfect. Because they were cut together, as long as I line them up the way they were cut, they're perfect all the way around. They're not necessarily straight, but they line up perfectly, so that I can take this and drop that right into my pattern and not have to grind those edges. So now I'm going to start putting this back together. This is my first bar. This is the 1/2 inch, and then the inch and a half and inch and a half. So I have the billet all welded up solid. I've seamed all the way around with no fill. The other side's completely filled. Flip this over, you can see. And then this corner I left these two proud so that I remember which side I have to rhombus to. The tree is going this direction. And I did that because I'm not really going to be able to see the pattern even on the end grain because I seamed that all the way across. So that way I just don't forget. Next thing I'll do is I'll weld a handle on this side. I got this other build I got to weld a handle on, and then I can weld it up. So I have the pattern welded bars all solid and welded, and I did the rhombus on them. They didn't come out quite as angular as I wanted, and I think it was just me not being used to the way the hammer's running again. And it didn't get them quite as crisp as I'd like, but I can fix this in grinding, and it'll actually help improve the pattern a little bit. I have this one etched, so you can, well, it's not very well etched, but it may show up on camera. Let's see. No, not really. Basically what's happened here is I have a very slight 15 and 20 line, one like this, one here that's filling in that top corner, one right here. I'm just kind of coloring in the 15 and 20 lines right now. So I have something like this, which is it's tree-like-ish. But I have to remember that this is going to elongate more because I'm going to be welding it again by cutting this portion here off. There, that's going to get sawed off after I grind this line crisp, this line crisp, and this line crisp, so I have a true rhombus, all four sides, or two of the parallel sides being even. So what I'll do first is I'll grind this one freehand on the grinder, and then I'll put that on my surface grinder so it stays parallel. I'll do the same thing probably for this side so that I can crisp up that corner, kind of push this over a little, and then I'll grind this one parallel to that. Then I will saw cut the final line here and just rip the bars. And then I'll reassemble everything. I'll put the angled cut here on the top, so it'll end up being, something like that with two of these cut and put in place. And then I'll TIG weld all around that, make sure it's all solid, weld that solidly, no fill TIG, because it's all 1080. It should just kind of blend in, a little bit. I'll square that back up, and then I'm going to forge that onto the to elongate it for length, and that should make it look a lot more tree-like, I hope. Once I have that solidly welded and that tile put together, then I will start to assemble my final billet for the knife. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal a trick from Jamie, where I'm going to weld it all as one tile. I'm going to weld it all the little pieces. I'm going to take my little fire pattern here. Oh, it's upside down. There, I'm going to re-weld this, draw it out, and I'll stack things around it so I get my image. I'll put my sun in there, my moon in there, whatever, and get that all assembled. Then I'll just forge the knife out of that one bar. I may make this big enough so I can cut two out of it. I have not quite decided yet. It is definitely easier for me to weld wide. So if I have a bigger billet and I cut it in half, I have more chance of getting a solid weld all the way through than for me if I weld narrow. Jamie's been getting good results welding down about, half an inch wide. I find if I stay 5/8 or over, I get a little bit better welds, and I don't run the risk of surface loss quite as often. I don't know why. It's just something about how I'm doing things. I think maybe he's keeping his stuff a little straighter, or maybe he's drawing a little faster, or something. But I know my limitations, so I'm going to work within them. If I'm worried about it, what I could do, and what Jamie does a lot of times, is put a sheet of steel on either side of the assembly, and that can not only block oxygen but add mass that's going to get round off later, and that can allow you to weld at a narrower cross section. That works great. I've done that a bunch of times, and I can weld down to like maybe 3/8 or so with no problems that way. The problem with that is then it's just a ton of grinding afterwards to get rid of all that outside material. And I think that my hatred of grinding is what's killing me for that one. Anyway, so I'm going to go start getting this ground up, and then I'll get it ready to assemble, and that'll be the next video, hopefully.